Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm really glad you could join me. Today I wanted to talk about American Gods, the TV series put out by the Starz network and based on the book American Gods by Neil Gaiman. And so I'm going to talk about a little bit about the book, but I'll also talk about the show and probably more about the show. But I do want to talk a little bit about the book because they do correlate. If you are watching this and you're enjoying the content, don't forget to like the video and stuff like that. So make sure to stay tuned till the end of the video because I do have a couple of other things I want to talk about. And with that being said, let's get right to the review. So I recently finished season 2 of American Gods. Now there is going to be at least one more season, season 3, and that's a good thing because they haven't come anywhere close to wrapping up the story as it was told in the book. But there's always a chance that they could do more than just one more season. So we'll see how it goes. At the point they're at now in the show, it kind of makes me feel like they probably only need one more season unless they're just going to elaborate on a lot of stuff. So if you have not read American Gods, I'll just give you a little bit of a summary. It is written by Neil Gaiman, as I said before, and it takes place in modern day America, and the old gods, such as the Norse gods, Odin and Thor and all of those, along with a few Egyptian and African gods mixed in for good measure, are living out their post-godhood lives on Earth, and they are dealing with the fact that they are being forgotten and pushed to the side because of the new gods that have come into the limelight. And those new gods are technology and information, the internet, things like that. And in this book, those new gods are personified as well. So you get to see an interaction between the old gods and the new, and the new gods are vying for control, and their desires to just wipe out any memory of the old gods. And then the old gods, Odin being at the forefront, embodying it in a character named Mr. Wednesday, they are getting together and hoping to plot and overthrow the new gods. So it's this war that's going on between the gods of technology and the gods of myth and legend that have been told throughout countless centuries in various different cultures. And it's a really, really good book. I wouldn't say it's my favorite of Neil Gaiman's books, but it's definitely a really good book. I would probably read it again, and maybe I should, honestly. Maybe I'd like it even better the second time. But it follows our main characters, which are, of course, as I mentioned, Mr. Wednesday. There's also Shadow Moon, which I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but we do find out that he is closely related to the old gods. And he's really the main character in the story, and his wife, or his zombie wife, I guess I would say at this point. She dies and then comes back to life, and she follows him around and helps him out in certain situations. So she's also a main character in the show, which she didn't really have that big of a role in the books, but I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along into the TV show review. But that gives you kind of an idea of the premise of American Gods. And now let's get into the differences in the show. And some of them are good, some of them are some of them are kind of a new twist on things. So I would say that probably my favorite of the characters in the show has to be Mad Sweeney. Now, if you haven't read the book, Mad Sweeney is a leprechaun. He's also had a few different other occupations throughout his many years of life, but he's he's a leprechaun, a full human-sized leprechaun, which is kind of weird at first. And he has a drinking problem, and he can conjure coins out of thin air, these gold coins, and somewhere along the way he loses his lucky coin and becomes very, very unlucky in everything he does. But he is solidly one of my favorite characters in the show. The actor they got to portray him is just fantastic. Ian McShane, who plays Grimnir or Odin or various different names, is just a brilliant actor. He was very well cast as well. Ricky Whipple, I think it is, plays Shadow Moon, and he's just a really class act as well. Fantastic. And you see other characters pop up in the book. There's Mr. Nancy, or Anansi. He's an African god, and you see Death pop up, or Anubis, I should say. You see Anubis pop up, and he's the guy that helps people transition to the afterlife. And you see Mr. Ibis, who he's kind of the bearer of the mark of death in Egyptian mythology. The Ibis is, but he's the the mortician in the story. So he preps the bodies for burial and things like that. It's just really, really cool to see some of these characters, and some of them have been altered from the way they were portrayed in the book. In the book, Mr. Nancy is quite advanced in age. In the show, he's much younger, but the way they do it in the show, he's much more lively and much more upfront. He's a key character in the show, which makes it really fun. And so he probably wouldn't necessarily be able to do the things that he does if he were a lot older, a lot more advanced in age. So I was very pleased with how they carried that out. They added some new gods into the show that were not in the book, and they gave some other characters much bigger roles than they had in the book. The sister-in-law of Shadow Moon, I think it's his sister-in-law. She plays a much bigger role in the show than she did in the book. His wife, who is now Walking Dead, also plays a very big part in the show, whereas she had a very minor role in the book. So it's very, very interesting to see the things that they've done to bring things to the forefront. One of the things that's very subtle in the book is Neil Gaiman's motif of someone being hung on the world tree, which is the figure from Norse mythology of the tree of life that spans the universe. And so there's a definite hanging motif in the book. Talks about people being hung and killed in that shape, with a noose around their necks and things like that. That is made much more upfront in the book, or it's made more upfront in the show than it was in the book, because you can't really do a lot of real subtle stuff in a TV show. So that made sense. And it was really cool to see these characters brought to life. It's action-packed, it's interesting, it's creepy in so many different ways. And the way that they brought some of the characters to life, I thought was really, really good. There's a character called Media. She's one of the new gods, and she can take various different forms and talk to people out of TVs and things like that. So, you'll be walking around and all of a sudden this lady on the TV is talking right to you, and that's Media. And at one point, she embodies Lucille Ball. At another point, she's somebody else. So it was really cool to see her brought to life. She's portrayed by Gillian Anderson from the X-Files in the first season, and then her character's changed and recast in the second season, which I don't know how I feel about, but it's okay. It's still a very, very entertaining show. So I was really glad to see that these characters brought to life in such a unique and interesting way. One thing that I kept racking my brains about, there's this character called Mr. World, and he's one of the new gods, and he pretty much embodies what we think of as the World Wide Web or the internet. He's everywhere and anywhere at once. And I kept racking my brain. I'm like, where have I seen him before? And I looked it up and I'm like, oh my God, that's Crispin Glover. I have not seen Crispin Glover since Back to the Future. He played George McFly, Marty McFly's dad, in Back to the Future, and I'm like, wait, what? I haven't seen him in ages. And for a 60-year-old guy, he looks really young. He's, I don't know what he's doing, but he looks really good, and he's really, really great in the show. I almost can't really remember anything else that I ever saw him in besides Back to the Future. So that was kind of cool. And I know I'm going on tons of rabbit holes here, so please bear with me. There's a method to my madness. And, I go off on these rabbit trails with actors I'm interested in. So, really, really good show. If you enjoy action and shows centered around mythological beings and gods from different religions, like Norse mythology and Egyptian mythology, I'm a huge ancient history buff. And I'm especially interested in the pantheons of all these old religions. I think it's really, really cool. So if you are into that sort of thing, you definitely need to read the book, and you definitely need to watch the show. Read the book first, I would recommend, but you don't have to. The show is an equally good place to start. One thing that I've really enjoyed in the show is the mystery behind some of the characters. I mean, you're halfway into the show and you still don't know a whole lot about Mr. Wednesday. You still don't know a whole lot about Shadow Moon. And some of the other secondary characters, you don't really know a whole lot about them. And that's what keeps it interesting. And I just think the acting is superb, and I do kind of wish that they were staying a little bit truer to the books. But they want to give some of these really powerful characters more screen time than they actually got in the book. And I kind of wonder if Neil Gaiman was writing it today, if he wouldn't have, given more detail to some of these side characters, because they are really fascinating, and I'm really glad to see them get their backstories fleshed out a little bit more. And so, yeah, that's my review for American Gods seasons 1 and 2. I'm really, really curious to see where they go with season 3, and I have a feeling that will probably be the last season. But I'm really impressed. And you know me, anything by Neil Gaiman or that has Neil Gaiman's stamp on it, anything that he's remotely involved with, I'm going to be there to see it and see what's happening with it. Sandman is about to start filming for Netflix, which I'm super excited about. And there are other books in the American Gods series. So if you get a chance, pick up A Nancy Boys, which is a side story all about Mr. Nancy and his family. I have not read it yet, but it's on my list of books to read. There is a short story in another book by Neil Gaiman called Trigger Warning. There's a short story about Shadow Moon. So I wouldn't recommend you read that, though, before you read American Gods, because you're not really going to know what's going on. I ended up reading that story before I read American Gods, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting, but what's going on? So definitely check it out. Make sure that you get a chance to watch this series. It is on Starz, although I think it may be on Netflix by now, maybe, or you can, do a free trial to Starz and watch it on there. But either way, however you do it, I highly recommend it. It's well worth watching. I got it for sale one time on Vudu, so I actually bought the first 2 seasons. Got them for like $10 total, and I'm really glad I purchased them. It was a worthwhile purchase. So, yeah. That being said, check the show out. Be forewarned. There is a lot of sexual content. There is a lot of disturbing imagery at times. So be forewarned that is in the show. It's a show definitely for adults. So not something you would want to watch with young kids. Or your older teens and new adults. Use your discretion on that. Whatever your feelings and thoughts are on that. So definitely a show to watch. So far, for what I've seen, I give the show a solid 4.5 stars. I give American Gods, the book, a solid 4.5 stars as well. As I've said, it wasn't one of my favorites of Neil Gaiman's, but it is a fantastic book and definitely a must-read book. So take that for what you will. Make sure to stay tuned for my next videos. I am doing a small booktuber tag in my next video. I was tagged by Philip Chase in that, so I'll be doing that for my video next week. Make sure you stay tuned for that, and I'll have some other reviews coming up shortly after that. I'll be talking more about my Lovecraft-tober reads and things like that as we get toward the end of the month. And so make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and that reminds me, do all this stuff right here on the screen so you don't miss out on any of my future content, and it does help me support my channel. So I definitely appreciate it. I'll leave links to American Gods, the book, and the TV show down below in the description, so if you're interested, you can check those out. I'll leave a link to Anansi Boys as well down there. Why not, And I think that about wraps it up, guys. Have a fantastic weekend. Make sure that you're reading more books. I will talk to you soon. Take care.